Guys, it's Miss Tennessee. This is going to be my very last YouTube video. I'm sure some of you are so sad. I apologize for not getting these to you sooner. I've had some technical difficulties at home with some things. So we're good to go now. So I'm going to go ahead and just combine 9 and 10. I'm going to make this as quick as I can for any of you that want to look over this, watch this tonight before the exam tomorrow. So I'll just kind of like I've done in these other videos, try to just hit the high points, things that have been on recent FRQs. So starting with chapter 9, which is your development chapter, I'm looking at your study guide. One of the first terms that has popped up on the AP exam is habituation. So understanding what habituation is and why it is used. So what it is decreasing responsiveness with repeated exposure to a stimulus. And so basically what that means is the more you're, exposed to the same, sight, sound, the less you will respond to it. This is not the same as sensory adaptation. Sensory adaptation is where your senses, your actual sensory receptors, stop responding. Habituation is where you just stop responding because you've been exposed to it so often, you kind of like get used to it, if you will. So for example, I in class told you if you go to college somewhere in a city where there's a lot of traffic and it's really loud, you may not be used to that noise. So maybe the first couple of weeks you're living in your new apartment, the traffic keeps you awake. But after a while, you habituate, you stop responding to it. Is it still there? Yes. Can you still hear it? Yes, but you've habituated, you stop responding to that repeated stimulus. We talk about that in development because we talk about it with newborn babies and the way they use it to tell, what our baby's capable of. Can they tell a difference in sights and sounds and things of that nature? So that's habituation. Moving down through, the kind of physical development early on to Piaget. So we really want to focus on the cognitive development. Piaget is super important when it comes to cognitive psychology, to make sure you know that he is the one who kind of laid out those stages of cognitive development, and also make sure you understand the difference in assimilation and accommodation. So remember when we talk about children early on as they're learning, familiarity with different people and objects, they form concepts, and they do that by assimilating and accommodating. So they take new incoming information and they assimilate that to what they already know. So if a child knows a four-legged, furry animal with a tail to be a dog, the first time that they see, a goat, another furry four-legged animal, they may call that goat a dog because they are assimilating. Accommodation is what comes in next when they then change those understandings to include that new information that it is not in fact a dog but is a goat. That is what we call accommodation. So that's, kind of that intro into Piaget. When it comes to his stages, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. They do come up. However, you have the chart in your notes. The things I wanted to kind of hit on, they have had conservation pop up on an FRQ before. Remember what conservation is. Conservation is that, that understanding the amount, mass, volume, whatever, remains the same, even though the form or the shape might change. We all remember the little girl from the PowerPoint with the 2 glasses of milk, pouring one into the taller, thinner glass, one is the short, round glass. She assumes they have different amounts, even though she knew that each glass, the 2 previous glasses had the same amount. She just hadn't mastered conservation. So important to understand that is not mastered until concrete operational stage is when children master, math and conservation. Backing up to the first stage, sensory motor, that key milestone, the big one is object permanence. Remember, that is mastered at 8 months old. So that happens during sensory motor from 0 to 2. During pre-operational, this is when children, this is when they kind of transition. They're egocentric, meaning they cannot see things from other people's point of view, but this is where they also master that theory of the mind towards the end of that stage, where they can grasp the concept of other people and what other people's thoughts are, emotions are. And then when we, I already covered concrete, go into formal operational, that's your more abstract thinking and hypothetical thinking. And that's also lining up with, when we talk about Kohlberg and our ability to start, using moral reasoning, things of that nature. So more mature moral reasoning, I should say, get into the conventional and post-conventional reasoning. Okay, the biggest criticism, remember at Piaget, this has also come up, the big criticism is his age-linked stages. So all of your modern day critics say, development is a continuous process. It doesn't happen in these concrete age-linked stages, but is more of a continuous process. Carlo, I just want to mention real quick, what we know, he worked with monkeys, and what he told us about attachment is that it's body contact, not food. So that's important. Eric Erickson will pop up on the AP exam. He comes up first when we talked about basic trust in children with secure and insecure attachment. And I'll get to his stages again here in a second. But remember Ainsworth, the strained situation, children who were securely versus insecurely attached children, their behavior of being comfortable in surroundings, and according to Erickson, having that basic trust, having developed basic trust in their environment and in the world, allows them to kind of, as long as their mother is there, they're kind of like, safety blanket is there, they will, explore and, their environment. Then moving on to Baumrind. I didn't put Diane Baumrind's name in your outline when this was on the AP exam before they used her name. She's the one who came up with the 3 parenting styles, the authoritarian, the permissive, and the authoritative. They have asked about both authoritarian and permissive parenting styles. So possibility you could see authoritative come up. Remember, you have your very lenient, not many rules, very few demands, and your permissive parents. With your authoritarian, it's your make demands and give no explanation for their rules, but my way or the highway type parents. Authoritative is going to be those parents who have rules, they expect obedience, but they explain why the rules are in place. Moving on from there, gender roles has come up. Remember, the big thing about gender roles is that they're defined by our society, our culture, and it's the expected behavior of either males or females that comes from the society or the culture that you live in. A big part of that is going to be the social learning theory, which, remember, is Albert Bandura and what they say about how we learn our gender roles through observation and through imitating and modeling what we see from those who raise us and our parents. Remember the difference in gender roles and gender typing. Gender typing is that acquisition of those roles. That's going to be, dad telling the little boy when he falls down, big boys don't cry, but picking up and hugging the little girl, treating them differently is how they acquire those gender roles, and that's what we call gender typing. But gender roles, remember, that's just that set of expected behaviors of males or females that's put forth by your society. Okay, on to the next page. In chapter 9, looking at Kohlberg. He has come up as well. Kohlberg was actually just on, I think, last year's, where you want to make sure you know pre-conventional, conventional, post-conventional morality. They're very simple. Remember, early on in childhood, we're all on that pre-conventional, where our moral decision-making, our understanding or choosing right from wrong is all based on self-interest. What is going to either gain me reward or help me avoid punishment? From there, when we start to develop into adolescence is when conventional morality comes into play. We want to uphold social order. We want social acceptance. So we uphold laws for those reasons. And then when we get into post-conventional, now it's our own internal personal ethics, whether or not it breaks the law or we will get into trouble, we uphold those things. So I told you about the man who helped blow up an abortion clinic. That's post-conventional because he knows it's against the law. So he violates conventional, but he also knows he's going to get into trouble, which violates pre-conventional. So that would be operating under post-conventional. So make sure that you know the difference in those three. Because actually post-conventionals come up twice on FRQ. Let's go to Erickson. I don't want you to spend a ton of time with all these stages. There's a lot of them, but the one that has come up has been the adolescent stage, which is identity versus role confusion. So make sure you understand identity, being comfortable understanding who we are, versus that, trying to figure out who you are, which happens during your adolescent stage before you go into that next stage of intimacy where we can have, strong relationships. Moving down to the bottom, the last thing that's really important that both of these have come up twice is cross-sectional and longitudinal studies. This could come up on either question. You may see this with, you could see this, with the, why can't I think? The research methods, because it's talking about a research study. Make sure you understand what a cross-sectional is, studying people of various ages all at one time versus longitudinal, studying the same people over a long period of time. I think we're all comfortable and know that, but that's important. And then if you look at the chart that I put there, just going back to kind of like intelligence, memory, and how that's affected with age, cross-sectional would show that we decline very rapidly when it comes to things like number of words remembered. It shows a sharper decline because we're comparing our 20-somethings to our 60-somethings. But if we look at longitudinal, we see it's actually a much more gradual decline. It doesn't happen so sharply. So that's kind of the difference in the cross-sectional and the longitudinal. Okay, just make sure that we know that. Okay, that wraps up chapter 9. And let's look at chapter 10. This will be quick. This isn't a lot. Obviously, no Sigmund Freud psychoanalysis. As long as you know those big key things that he focuses on with personality are going to be your unconscious and your childhood experiences, you should be good to go. But I do think you could see something specific about id, ego, superego. So remember, the id is like the devil operating on that pleasure principle. We want what we want it now. It's immediate gratification. This is what we operate on as, infants. The only thing there, we don't develop that superego until adolescence, according to Freud. Then the superego is the angel. That's your conscience. That's your moral compass telling you to do the right thing. That's what's your judgmental side. Makes you feel guilt and remorse if you don't do the right thing. And in the middle there, balancing the two, is your ego. And that's your reality principle. Okay. With the defense mechanisms, those have come up as well. Specifically regression and reaction formation. Regression simply is just retreating back to a more childlike stage, infantile. Freud would say you would retreat back to your early psychosexual stages. So maybe behavior like throwing a temper tantrum as an adult would be a type of regression. Reaction formation is the other one. And that's the one, remember, we switch our unacceptable impulses or feelings to their exact opposite. So let's say we, have deep hatred for, our boss at work, but we know it's unacceptable. And so our ego struggles with that and we want to protect it. We use that defense mechanism and we will completely treat our boss in a very nice and loving way or friendly way, instead of with the deep hatred that we actually have towards them. A lot of them are, remember, self-explanatory. Don't mix up displacement and projection. Those are the two people tend to mix up a lot. Remember, when we're projecting, we are assuming others share in our behaviors or our thoughts. So I cheated on a test, I have guilt, but I tell myself, or I project that onto others, saying, well, everyone else is cheating too. Where displacement, remember, that's like taking it out on someone or something less threatening. So I, have a bad day at school and whatever my anger or my, inappropriate impulses, I take it out on, like, I yell at my younger sibling or something like that. Okay, on to the next page. I'm going to go all the way down to under the humanistic. Self-actualization comes up again here. So again, Maslow, understanding that stage of, achieving self-fulfillment and, becoming self-actualized, that we're kind of have reached that level of potential in our own personal life. Carl Rogers, important as well. His client-centered approach. They have asked about unconditional positive regard in the past. So making sure you understand, he says that we have to have that genuine, accepting, and empathetic environment. And so when he talks about acceptance, unconditional positive regard is having 100% acceptance no matter what. Unconditional means no matter what you do, even if you do something bad or embarrassing, we still love you and accept you. Okay. And then looking at trait theories, the big five has come up 3 times. 2 of those times they've asked about conscientiousness. That is just looking at how organized or careful or disciplined you are. You can see that right there in your notes with the picture of the canoe. They've also asked about extroversion. So just how outgoing, talkative, open, social you are. Bandura, again, he always comes up in some way, whether it's social learning, observational learning, same thing. But that social learning theory, when it comes to personality, is where he coined that term, reciprocal determinism. So if you remember, and if you look in your textbook, they have that example of the rock climbing. So what he says is basically the way that we behave, our personality, our outward, behavior is a combination of, how we think, our internal cognition, kind of those internal traits, like being an introvert or an extrovert, and our environment. So the behavior, the internal cognition, and the environment all kind of have an impact on one another. That's what reciprocal determinism is. And so, like with the rock climbing, you have the behavior of learning to rock climb is going to be influenced by, first your internal thoughts about rock climbing. If you're an introverted person, it might be thinking about all of the risks and all the dangers. And then there's, on the other side, your environment, those friends of yours that are really pushing because they rock climb and, oh, you're going to love it and you should do this and it's so great. So it's that combination of, and it's social cognitive. So it's the thinking, it's the social, but then it's also those internal personality traits we possess. Turning to the back page, almost done. 5 times on FRQs, the term self-efficacy has come up. 5. No self-efficacy. It is that sense of being competent and being effective at whatever it is you do. If I have a sense of self-efficacy as a teacher, it means I feel that I am effective and I am competent at my job and at what I do. You can have self-efficacy in, playing sports, in different subjects at school, in, musical talent, whatever it is. No self-efficacy. It has come up 5 times, and that is a lot of times. And then the last 2 things, as far as what's come up on the FRQs, is going to be individualism versus collectivism. And so we talk about that a lot because coming from an individualistic versus a collectivist culture can really influence, in this case, it's your personality. And so I want you to make sure you understand when you come up with individualism, it is priority is for your own personal goals. You are looking out for you first, number one. It's, the individual over the group. Where collectivist, your priority is to the group goals, whether that's family, whether that's maybe, a group of coworkers that you work with, who knows? That's where you prioritize the good of the group over yourself personally. So yeah, I wanted to keep this short. We're under 20 minutes right now. That's good. But we have a call tonight at 8:30. We'll have our last Google Meet. Please hop on if you have any questions at all. You don't even have to talk. there's a feature where you can just type in your questions, and I will address them. So, please feel free, hop on, ask questions, or even if you just want to hop on and listen. Okay. But that's all I have for 9 and 10. Tomorrow's the day. So anything you need before tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I am here. I'm available. Otherwise, good luck. And I'm so sorry I don't get to see you before you take your test. But I'm here for anything you need. All right. Talk to you guys later.